Every time I walk through these corridors, it feels magical.
I knew the space because I'd been coming here to visit Mum and Dad when they were working. When you walk in, it's like this sort of TARDIS because it's got all the different studios. So I knew that, but I didn't know that Elgar had opened it. Hadn't really clocked that Studio One was like the big orchestral space.
There's actually a very funny sequence in a way, which is the Gallaghers entirely separately.
Yeah.
Talking about their experiences of being at Abbey Road.
Yeah.
And it was actually very moving because I can't remember if it's Liam or Noel says, you know, the night that we were supposedly creating Merry Hell, we were actually lying in the dark listening to the Beatles.
Yeah. They both kind of contradict each other, but they both have this recollection of being in Studio 2 where they were recording and playing the albums so loud back to back that apparently it broke one of the speakers.
Looking at some of the most extraordinary women who were here, and at the very moment that is an archive of Jacqueline du Pré, it was really before her illness kicked in, and it's an incredible performance.
Yeah, and it was also the place where she did her last ever recording. Abbey Road has always been this safe place where you come and you close the door and you're safe and you can create music.
Goldfinger, he's the man with the Midas touch.
Shirley Bassey's doing Goldfinger, and Jimmy Page is the session musician.
Yeah, it was like a folklore story. It was like, oh, Goldfinger was here and John Barry asked her to hold the note for so long that she did it, but she collapsed on the floor. We found out through the booking sheets that Jimmy Page was a session guitarist on that session. You know, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to tell that. And that was the challenge in this documentary, because in a recording studio, the etiquette is to not film and take photographs. It's a place where you just create music.
I see the people working and see it working for them.
You also managed to winkle a sound-only...
Winkle, I like that word.
You managed to winkle a sound-only conversation with Kate Bush, who's notoriously private, but this place meant so much to her.
I really knew I needed Kate Bush in the documentary somehow because she produced her own music here. She directed her own video in Studio 2, and she's just such an influential female artist and utilised the space so beautifully. And then she sent me this audio and I was just like...
So they just literally...
Bliss.
They just ping into your inbox one day and
think, it did, because she's not somebody that will just say yes. She needs to know why she's doing it, and it has to have meaning. So we discussed it, and then she wrote something, and then she said, what do you think of this? And then she's sort of recorded it and sent it to my inbox.
Elton John he's just so fulsome in his love of your dad and the Beatles and what it meant to him, and again a session musician here.
Yeah. In the documentary, he says he became Elton John through having to arrive and that fear of having to be rehearsed and being a session musician on other people's tracks.
I was actually the smell of fear when I came in. Am I going to mess this up?
We got the master recordings. We were able to isolate his keyboard playing, and you can really hear it's Elton John playing. It's so his style, even back then. It's incredible.
Very nicely. We're getting musicians in now. And we'll do the last bit.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Tell me about the whole recording of All You Need Is Love, and you must have watched it so many times, but what do you still feel when you watch that back?
Dad used to say this to me, and it's something I really wanted to include, that he was saying that before that point in the 60s, everything felt a little bit like black and white, like everyone was coming out of the war and everything was sort of getting back on its 2 feet again. And he said there was a point in the 60s where everything turned into technicolor, and suddenly you could have your own style and dress a bit differently. And
it's interesting because you could have put a lot more Beatles in, but you could also have put a lot more Wings in as well.
Wings and my mum, particularly, I have at the beginning, sort of showing it's sort of there as the significance of why I wanted to do the documentary. Because you know, I'd seen a picture of my mum leading the pony jet across the zebra crossing, and then it was so her. I was like, I have to. That's one of the things that I really was definite I had to have in it.
For all of us in 1973 who loved the Beatles but then went on to love Wings, what was so important about that for women in particular was seeing your mother in the heart of the band.
I often think about it, and I'd love to talk to her about it now. She was just so brave and innocent. She was just like, oh yeah, we're in love and I'll just be in the band. And she wasn't a trained keyboard player or singer. She was a photographer. She was given a really hard time at the time. People were like, you don't dress properly, because she was mixing vintage and designer and like wearing odd socks, and she'd cut her own hair. She'd do her, you know, she wouldn't wear makeup. You can't play. And now it's like, oh my God, you look at it and you're like, she was great, she was talented.
No, because it wasn't as if she was just entering any old band.
I mean, who else does that? You're married to Paul McCartney, and it's like all eyes are on what he does next, and they do a band together.
And we have this diary entry, which I absolutely love.
Yes.
Which is Sunday, 21st January 1973.
Oh, wow.
In Studio 2, Wings.
Yeah.
And in Studio 3, Pink Floyd doing Dark Side of the Moon.
Isn't that incredible? It's somewhere people congregate. People that care about music congregate here, whether you're recording here or whether you come to the zebra crossing. Yeah. It has so much meaning for so many people.
Does your dad like it?
He and I watched it together, and then we didn't talk about it a lot. He said he really liked it. But then he saw somebody the next night at a party, and that person was texting me going, I just saw your dad and we were talking about the documentary about 15 minutes and he really loved it. And so I'm very happy.
Job done.
Yeah. Phew.
Ray McCartney, thank you very much.
Pleasure.